For decades, America has been the world's superpower, leading in economics, military might, and cultural influence. But, with rising powers like China, shifting alliances, and internal challenges, some argue the US is slipping. Others say its core strengths, innovation, military, and the dollar, keep it on top. In this video, we'll break down 10 key points to understand this complex shift. From economic rivalry to geopolitical tensions, we'll explore what's at stake. Stick around, hit that like button, and let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into global issues. China's rise challenges US economic dominance. China's GDP PPP surpasses the US at about $35 trillion versus $25 trillion. China leads in manufacturing, 5G tech, and AI patents, with initiatives like the Belt and Road expanding its global trade networks. The US still dominates financial markets. New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq hold 40% of global market cap, and the dollar remains the world's reserve currency, 59% of forex reserves. But China's yuan is gaining, used in 3% of global transactions. US debt, at $36 trillion, strains its economy, while China's state-led investments grow. This shift suggests a multipolar economic order, though the US retains advantages in innovation and market depth. The US military remains unmatched, with a $934 billion defense budget dwarfing China's $296 billion. It maintains over 700 overseas bases versus China's handful. However, China's advancements in hypersonics, cyber warfare, and naval capacity challenge US superiority, especially in the Pacific. Russia's actions in Ukraine and Syria show its regional clout. Despite economic sanctions, the US struggles to translate military might into decisive wins, as seen in Afghanistan and Iraq. Rising defense spending globally, $2.2 trillion in 2025, signals a multipolar arms race. While the US holds a lead, its ability to project power is tested by agile rivals and overextension risks. The US dollar's role as the world's reserve currency is under pressure. It accounts for 59% of global forex reserves, down from 71% in 2000. China pushes yuan internationalization via the Belt and Road, with yuan-based trade rising to 3% globally. US trade deficits, $800 billion in 2023 and $36 trillion debt, raise concerns about dollar stability. Meanwhile, central banks diversify reserves, with gold and euro gaining. A weaker dollar could spike US inflation and reduce sanction power. Despite this, the dollar still dominates 88% of global transactions, and no rival matches its liquidity. The decline is gradual, but the trend points to a less dollar-centric world. China-led institutions like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and BRICS New Development Bank are reshaping global finance, challenging US-led Bretton Woods systems, IMF and World Bank. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, covering 30% of global GDP, boosts Asia's trade clout. These platforms expand China's influence, with over 150 countries in the Belt and Road. The US retains sway in the UN and NATO but faces pushback, with Russia and China vetoing US proposals in the Security Council. As the Global South seeks autonomy, US influence wanes in regions like Africa and Latin America. This shift to multipolarity dilutes US control over global economic and political rules. The US leads in tech innovation, with Silicon Valley driving AI, quantum computing, and biotech. US firms hold 73% of global IT market cap, but China's catching up, with breakthroughs in semiconductors and AI models rivaling US tech. Its Made in China 2025 plan targets tech self-sufficiency. US export controls aim to curb China's progress, but they've spurred China's domestic innovation. Meanwhile, nations like South Korea and Singapore excel in niches like green tech. The US's edge relies on talent and research and development, but brain drain and underinvestment risk its lead. Tech supremacy is no longer guaranteed as global competition intensifies. US alliances, like NATO, face strain. Europe, wary of US isolationism under leaders like Trump, boosts its own defense, with Germany and France eyeing independent systems. The US's $75 billion aid to Ukraine 2022 to 2023 shows commitment, but congressional reluctance signals fatigue. India and the Global South prioritize strategic autonomy, resisting US-led alliances. China's partnerships with Russia, Iran, and others counter US influence. Policies like America First risk alienating allies, reducing soft power. While the US retains strong ties, a multipolar world demands coalition building, where it's losing ground to agile rivals. Domestic instability weakens US global influence. Political polarization, exemplified by divisive elections and eroded trust in institutions, hampers policy cohesion. In 2025, 47% of Americans see US influence declining, per Pew Research. Economic inequality. Top 1% own 32% of wealth, fuels populism and unrest. Infrastructure decay and stagnant wages, real wages flat. Since 2000 strained domestic focus. These issues distract from foreign policy, reducing US credibility abroad. A divided nation struggles to project unified strength, making it harder to counter external challenges. China's unified governance, despite flaws, offers a contrast in strategic focus. The Global South, India, Brazil, Indonesia, is pivoting from US-centric alliances. India, for instance, deepens US ties, but avoids Western sanctions on Russia, prioritizing its interests. BRICS nations, 40% of global population, push for independent financial systems, reducing reliance on US-led frameworks. Africa and Latin America increasingly turn to China for infrastructure and trade. This shift reflects distrust in US consistency, especially after interventions in Iraq and Afghanistan. As these nations assert autonomy, the US loses leverage in shaping global agendas, signaling a multipolar order where influence is shared. Climate change and migration reshape global dynamics, challenging US influence. By 2030, climate disasters could displace millions in Asia and Africa, per Pare Kana. The US, with 4% of global emissions, faces pressure to lead on climate, but prioritizes domestic issues. Its aging population, median age 38, contrasts with younger, growing nations like India, 28. This demographic edge fuels rivals' economic growth, while US labor shortages loom. Climate and migration strains weaken US soft power as nations seek solutions elsewhere. A multipolar world demands cooperative leadership, where the US struggles to adapt. US soft power. Hollywood, tech, universities remain strong, but faces cracks. In 2025, 54% of Americans with high global knowledge see US influence waning. Policies like unilateral tariffs and Israel support erode goodwill, especially in the Global South. China's cultural exports like TikTok and Confucius Institutes gain traction. US media still dominates, e.g. Netflix's global reach, but domestic polarization and isolationist rhetoric weaken its moral authority. As nations like India and Brazil assert cultural identities, the US must adapt its soft power to a multipolar world to maintain influence. That's our deep dive into whether the US is losing its global dominance. From China's economic rise to shifting alliances and internal challenges, the world is moving toward multipolarity. The US still wields unmatched military and cultural power, but its unipolar grip is loosening. What do you think? Can the US adapt to this new era, or is its decline inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe for more global insights. Check out our other videos on geopolitics and hit the bell so you don't miss our next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.